I was selling myself short for years. And it wasn't until I went off on my own and started my own channel that I started selling my channel for its worth.
This is Shannon Morse. She's been a full-time YouTuber for over 15 years. Best known for her in-depth and unique perspectives in network security, technology, and travel, Shannon, or Snubs as the internet knows her, has been able to build an incredibly successful career as a host, tech creator, tech reviewer, ambassador, and more. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how she's been able to be a full-time profitable YouTuber for so long, her struggles with asking for and being paid what she is worth, the problems that she has run into as a female in an excessively male-dominated industry, and how membership has become the backbone of her income. Shannon holds nothing back as she shares her money-making experiences, good and bad. Becoming a full-time YouTuber is the dream, but how can you financially get there? Welcome to The Funded YouTuber, where we sit down with successful YouTubers to dive headfirst into the money-making side of being a full-time YouTuber and creator. We will be breaking down their paths to full-time income, sharing struggles, exposing their victories, and literally mapping out their income streams, how they got them, and what they are working on next. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by GigaStar. Inspired by YouTubers like you with the vision to fuel human creativity, GigaStar brings creators and investors together.
Why did you start creating on YouTube, and why tech?
I just kind of fell into YouTube right after I graduated from college, and I didn't even make money off of the YouTube channel I was working on for like a good 2 years until we did something completely different. And we'll chat about that as well. So the reason I was so interested in doing YouTube in the first place is because I have a background in school doing theater. I'm a thespian since I was a middle schooler. So always been entertaining, always been on a stage, always having an audience and like hearing feedback and laughter and crying and like, you know, all those things. And I also really enjoyed building computers with my dad since I was a little teeny tiny kid. So being able to take those two passions, which are normally completely different things, I was able to kind of stick them together with YouTube and create this new career that didn't really exist when I was in school. So my graduation, my major was completely different from what I'm doing now.
What's your major in?
Restaurant and hospitality administration. So I learned how to run a business. I was able to use that, but I'm never going to own a hotel.
It seems like it could be like a really cool techie hotel, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
What led you to technology and doing what you do on YouTube?
It was the people that I started doing videos with. So I didn't start my own YouTube channel. I was invited to join a YouTube channel that had started right when YouTube started in 2005. So 3 years into their performances on YouTube, their videos, I was invited to be one of the co-hosts on that channel. And they did cybersecurity, hacking, DIY, makers, those kind of topics and those kind of genres. So I joined that. And with my background working with hardware with my dad, I was able to introduce a lot of my own perspectives to that channel. And it kind of worked really fluidly because it was already something that I was interested in. So I just took that ball and started to run with it. And I was able to research my own topics. And I did that for, oh my gosh, I just ended my relationship with that channel. So I just quit that channel like 2 months ago. So it's been like 15 years.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so what was it that led you to start your own channel and create your own content?
That happened in 2019. So I was working with other companies for about 10 years, and there's lots that happened in that time frame. MCNs, there were sponsorships, there were all sorts of different shows that I was working with, as well as brands, like branded content as well. And eventually I determined that I wasn't co-hosting any shows anymore after my last show was sunset in 2019. So I decided to kind of go off on my own and start my own YouTube channel. I'd had a YouTube channel previously, and I was just uploading like home videos and my own little test edits, kind of getting a feel of how to edit on my own. But it wasn't until 2019 that I was like, I think that I have the capabilities as an editor and as a host on my own to be able to do this now. And I have the following and the backing that I could potentially turn this into my main income source. So I did it. I kind of took that gamble, and I decided to really start being consistent on that channel. So now I'm 5 years in at this point.
Yeah, we're just about there. Tell us, what do you create now? What problems do you solve on YouTube?
So my main creations have to do with tech reviews with a very, very sharp focus on security and privacy for consumers. Every single time I do a video, whether it's a tech review of a phone or a tutorial about something online, I always try to introduce security and privacy concepts to get people to start to think about that concept, something that they should consider whenever they're purchasing products.
Now, with your channel specifically, when was the first time you got like a taste of what income could be as a YouTuber?
Ooh, that's a great question too. Um, gosh. Well, I think I have two answers for that. One is from my channel itself, and one is from when I had first started on YouTube. When I had first started on YouTube, we had joined an MCN, a multi-channel network, the channel that I was working on, and they started selling our show against different advertisers. And when we first got our check in the mail, it was not enough to quit my full-time job at the time. I had worked at a bank, of all places, even though I was doing a hacker show, which kind of sounds weird, but I was. And taking home that first check and being able to like order pizza, that was a big deal because we didn't think that we would ever get to that point where we could seriously start considering, oh, we could actually, maybe one day we could quit our jobs. And a couple of years later, we were able to. Now, 10 years down the line, the moment that I realized that this could be an income source was when me and my husband saved up enough to purchase a house. We had to move to a different state. We used to live in California. We had to move to a different state to afford it, but we were able to put 20% down and purchase a house. And now we live in Colorado. And that was the moment that I was like, oh my gosh, this is my future. Like being a content creator, creating my own productions, having my own LLC, like this is my future.
I love this example. I always tell people like this is the house that YouTube made because I had to do the exact same thing. It's so funny to me that we had that same journey. We had to move out of state to get a new house, and the money that I had made for my business as a creator, my husband's a veteran, and so we are fortunate to have the VA home loan. But when I wanted to buy our house that we have now, we're like, well, sir, like you don't but technically make enough money to qualify for this. And then I had to give them like my P&L, and they were like, you could have bought this house yourself. And I was like, yes, like that's the house that you, like, I'm like, that's the house that YouTube built. Right. Like, and so it's a really cool, amazing thing to be able to explain to people. And in the town I live, because I live in a small town, the town I live in, when I explain to people like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a full-time content creator. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, what's your husband do? And I'm like, my husband's a stay-at-home dad. And they're like it's like that Wile E. Coyote double take thing, like from the cartoons, where they're like, excuse me, what? You make enough money to live here? As a YouTuber, I'm going to need more information. So it's just so funny to like have those journeys and kind of walk through that. So when were you able to go full-time as a YouTuber? Like, what were the circumstances that you had in place that allowed for you to have that happen?
I officially quit my last like salaried employee job in I want to say it was 2012. No, 2010. 2010, 2012. It was a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
It's about 2 years into my working on the show that I was co-hosting, the one that I got started on with YouTube. And I went into work one day and I was like, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. And they were like, oh my gosh, really? I'm like, yeah, we have enough sponsors. So yes, I can quit. I was not making enough money at that time anyway. I was making $24,000 per year or something like that. It was pennies. Like it was really bad, but I was also living in a house with like 3 other people. So it was fine. I had a lot of roommates. I was basically living on like ramen noodles and college money with that full-time job. So it was okay because at that time, YouTube was able to cover that income and I was able to go full-time.
You've been doing this for over 15 years. And so I want us to go on the journey of making money as a YouTuber over these years. Okay, so what's the same? What is probably the most constant same thing that you have experienced financially across YouTube in the last 15 plus years?
Oh, gosh.
Just stumped, guys, stumped.
Yeah, I would say sponsor negotiations. That's been something I've had to do since I first started. And I've oftentimes noticed that when I'm in those negotiations, I was selling myself short for years. And it wasn't until I went off on my own and started my own channel that I started selling my channel for its worth. And it took me 12 years to figure out what I was worth. And it wasn't until I started making friends outside of my little bubble in the YouTube space that I was able to realize, oh, I'm selling myself short. This is bad. Like, I need to get to myself to the point where I feel comfortable.
What does it look like? Because I'm sure so many of us out there are like completely unsure, like what to charge for sponsorships and brand deals. What were you doing? Like, what were you doing that was selling yourself short? And how do you think that people should approach sponsorship deals?
Well, I think part of it is because I'm a woman and I'm a woman in the tech environment. And oftentimes we're paid less. Just, I don't know why that happens. It still happens to this day, and it's a problem. And I think a lot of that kind of works itself into your own mindset of thinking that your value is not equal to the men that also do similar jobs as you. So I had to kind of reach out and find a male mentor who I had been working with for a very long time. He had a history in radio. So he had like 20 years plus experience over what I had, and was able to come to me and say, oh, well, this is what we were paying like the women that worked at these different environments that I was working at. And he also worked with different MCNs. So he was able to tell me some background information about those. So I gave him my rates. I was very transparent, and I asked him, like, should I be charging more for sponsorships? And he was like, yes, double that. 100%. And I was like, are you sure? And at the time, it was only like a few $100 that I was charging.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was very, very small. But my channel was also tiny at the time, so I didn't mind because it wasn't like the only thing I was trying to make money off of. So I did that, and I didn't have any sponsors turn me down. So that made me realize I should have been charging more for a very long time. Because if these sponsors aren't even coming back and saying, oh, no, we need to negotiate a rate, that tells me that they have a much bigger budget than what I thought they would. So,
and no sponsor is going to say, oh, you're charging. No sponsor is going to say, let me pay you more. They're like, okay, that's your rate. That's what I'll pay you.
Exactly. So after chatting with him, and then I used to go to like a lot of hacker conventions and cybersecurity conventions. Once I started my own channel, I started going to YouTuber conventions, which is a very different space because it entails a lot of different genres. So going to that, I was able to start having those discussions outside of my bubble again. And I made friends with a lot of people who do similar content as well as different content, but they have similar growth patterns as I do, like in terms of subscribers, watch time, views, which is very important. And I was able to ask them, like, hey, what do you charge? Like, what does your media kit look like? Do you think that this is a valuable rate? Like, should I be charging more? And through those conversations, I found out that a lot of the other tech people were getting pitched the same exact pitch as I was from the same exact brands. So in some ways, I was competing against them, and I was getting those sponsorships because I was so cheap, but I was also devaluing myself. So I could have valued myself higher, signed on with less brands, but made the same amount of money, which in turn would give me more time to focus on my growth because I wasn't focusing on just getting videos out constantly. So yeah, it was a struggle for quite a while until I got to that point where I was able to have those conversations.
Circling back to what you had mentioned about being a woman in tech and like that whole idea of like devaluing yourself, not charging yourself as much. Did you reach a point when you're doing your sponsorship negotiations and building your brand relationships where being a woman is actually an advantage and actually comes with a higher price point because there's not as many women in tech?
If it did come with a higher price point, I didn't know about it.
Even now, like, are you experiencing that now?
I think that there are times that sponsors probably choose me because I'm of this minority in the tech genre. There's not a lot of women who really focus on like cybersecurity and technology reviews for consumers. In fact, there might be like 2 or 3 of us on YouTube. I'm not even really sure how many there are. So I think that does give me a competitive advantage in that place because they do want to have that diversity with their brands. But if I'm being paid more because of that, I don't know if I am.
Okay.
I need to have those conversations with other YouTubers and find out if they're charging less than I am.
Very interesting. I would have thought that would be the very least a reason to probably like what you had already said, like being picked because you are. Sort of the idea of like picking between like ones are kind of all the same and you that has this different approach and style and gender allows to provide a different perspective. I think that is just as valuable. Yeah. It's not like oh, she got it because she's a woman. She got it because she's the best person for it. And she
Yeah.
has this unique perspective that a lot of people don't get to
Oh, I
use
see
to
what you
do
mean.
it.
Yeah. I do offer a different perspective on a lot of cases. I'll give you an example. Like I talk about earbud reviews, and oftentimes I tell people I don't like the ones that have stems because those get caught in long hair. And a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't think about that. And I'm like, well, yeah. Or smaller earbuds work better for my smaller ears. And that's just a physical feature of something that I'm able to talk about from my own personal experience and my personal view. There's also like things that I'll think about online with security and privacy that a lot of men that do similar reviews won't think about, like harassment and stalking. Those are things that I'm constantly thinking about. While they're thinking about home security, I'm thinking about like, oh, but how could somebody use this to stalk me? Like those are just things that as a woman, I'm thinking about all the time when I'm like, walking around outside at night or taking my dog on a walk down to the mailbox or whatever it might be. So when it comes to those kind of perspectives, I do naturally share those in my reviews.
I think the perspective is an important asset within your content because I have watched your content and I bought things because of your reviews and how you use is very similar, obviously, to how I use it as well. Because I also worry about security. I also worry about the same security things that you talk about, especially because I have a family. And so there's a lot of things that I always make sure that I'm doing in my content to keep my family safe. Like no one sees my address on places and like where my home is and maps and never talk about the city that I'm from online, that kind of things, because I want to make sure that we're safe and protected. And I learned a lot of those things from our relationship and also the content that you create as well. So I totally think that that is an underlooked thing for sure.
Just having that conversation and that answer with you, like maybe I should sell that more on my media kit. Like I have a different perspective. You should hire me.
I am here to help everyone make more money. So it's all yours, Shannon. You dig it. Okay, so we've talked about the thing that's been the same, which is sponsorships. So I love that breakdown because it's sort of like for as long as there has been something to sell, there has been people that want to buy it. And I think that that is such a funny thing that even now to this day, like when people talk about the big three for how creators make money in this space, it's AdSense, sponsorships, and affiliates. And I think that sponsorships probably even came before AdSense was really a big thing for us as well. And you are literally explaining that to us now. What do you think has been the biggest?
I still remember my first sponsorship to this day.
We need to get that story another time for sure. I want to know more though, like what has changed so much over the course of your 15 plus years? Like what's the biggest financial change that you have seen in the YouTube space?
For me, it's been memberships. And that's basically whenever viewers decide to pitch in like $2, $5, $50 per month to get access to additional perks that I'm offering on different membership platforms, whether that's like YouTube memberships or Patreon or wherever it might be. And I've noticed from the very, very start of my career, that wasn't even something that existed. Like all we were doing was sponsorships and ad revenue. In 2014 to 2017, sponsorships really became a huge thing because Patreon started in 2014 and a lot of platforms started kind of picking up speed right after that. And I took advantage of that. I was one of the very first creators on Patreon, and I had like 2 or 3 different Patreon accounts for the different shows that I was doing at the time with different co-hosts. And we were splitting the money and we were able to do those shows without worrying really about ad rev or sponsorships for quite some time. And in the past few years, mostly because of the economy and because of the I'll say the VID, as we know from 2020. Because of that, a lot of people had to drop off or cancel their memberships. So I had to focus more on maintaining those brand relationships that I had started in 2019, which have just now in the past 1 or 2 years have started picking up speed again after the vid has kind of declined a little bit. So yeah, I would say memberships have been a really interesting like experimental process since I was able to start on it from when it very first started. And it's continued to this day because of loyalty. There's a lot of loyalty between people who have followed me through my 15-year career from like when they were kids up to now and they're in adulthood to what I'm doing now. And they're still really proud to support that. And I see that because I've gotten to know these people. So I think having that around and seeing how that has changed through the year and has kind of remained consistent slash, a little bit of flexibility has really made me focus a lot more on how I can diversify my income.
What do you think the secret is to a successful and profitable membership?
I think you have to have quite a bit of transparency with your members. There has to be some flexibility in terms of your time and how much time you give to your members and the transparency that you offer them. And I've noticed through my career having memberships and introducing them, the more often I can give them something where they have that direct affiliation with me, like face-to-face conversations, or if they have some way to chat with me online, like a private Discord group, which is something that I offer, or a live Q&A, or I do a Google Meetup every month. Like those kind of things where you offer that transparency and you offer kind of a behind the scenes type of thing. People love that, and they're really, really happy to support you when you're giving them something like that, even if you're not giving them like physical merchandise. That's something that I found people might sign up for in the first place, but they're not going to stick around for physical merchandise.
Very interesting. That's good to know. Like usually, I know some of the patrons I've seen that's like you get a high enough package. It's like a quarterly merch shop, whatever. But I'm pretty sure that the reason people sign up is because they get those like one-to-one like live streams together to have access and build relationships with them and bond with people that they admire. And I think that probably allows for them to have that really successful relationship with them on both sides.
I think a lot of YouTubers don't understand the importance of having those relationships, and they just look at memberships as something that's very transactional. And if you only look at the transaction, the monetary transaction, you're like, oh, I'll give you a t-shirt for this thing. Like they're not as likely to support you if they don't see you as like a human being. And in my case, like being able to go through this and tell people like, hey, you're the reason why I was able to go full time. Like you're the reason why I don't have to focus on sponsors. I don't have to like sell my soul, as a lot of viewers tend to think of sponsors. Like I can really focus on bringing them something that's valuable, because they can bring their questions to me and know that I'm going to respect their questions, whether that's tech questions or security or privacy, or if they just want to chat, like they just want to share something or whatever it might be, like say Merry Christmas. Like I'm going to respect them and I'm going to give them that time, and I'm going to treat them just like I want to be treated if I was a fan of somebody.
Okay, so we talked about a lot of like money success. I'd love to know about a time that you had a horrible money experience.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Triggered.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I have a perfect example for this. This happened in 2014. I can tell you the date. It was in October. I was working on 2 different MCN shows. One was called Techzilla and another one was called Before You Buy at a company called Twit. And I came home from my honeymoon, and Twit had decided to fire me. But it went public before I got home from my honeymoon because they were live streaming a screen that showed conversations. And so they ended up bringing me in for a meeting and saying, hey, we'll keep you on, but we want to have you on as a contractor. And I was like, okay, well, my rate's doubled. So I took advantage of it, and I was able to use that income to start building my own channel.
Why did they want to fire you?
I don't remember. I think like they said my views weren't great or something. But I was a producer, so I had access to the view information on the back end. So
You knew it was wrong.
Take that as you will. And then there was Techzilla, which was an MCN show with Discovery Digital, and they decided they wanted to cancel that show because I think it was too expensive or something. So both me and the co-host that I was working with, both of us were going to be fired from that show. We were going to end up with no income coming in, which was kind of panic inducing right after you get married and go on a honeymoon. So me and that co-host, luckily we were smart, and I started talking to him and he started chatting with me. Like Patreon just became a thing. Our friend at Daily Tech News Show just started his. Why don't we start a Patreon? Like we know that we have the viewer space. We know that they want to continue seeing this show. Like, do you think that they would support us to do our own thing? Because that means that we wouldn't have to focus on sponsors when we first start. Like we could do our own thing. And I was like, well, my show at Twit just got canned too. They don't want me working on that show as a host or a producer anymore. So why don't we start our own show? So we discussed this. We started our own show. I was still working on that other show that I had started on back in 2008. So I was like, maybe we can share the space with that show on the days that we're not recording and just use that studio space for free. And of course, the guy that I was working with on my veteran show, he was just like, yeah, use the space. I don't care. So we were able to get a free space. We were able to back it on Patreon and make it something positive. But at the time, it was an extremely stressful part of my career because I didn't know where I was going to go from there. And it was so early in my career that I didn't know how to edit my own videos. Like I was very, very stressed out and concerned that I wouldn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah. I can see that being really stressful and frustrating, like, especially because all this seemed to happen like without your control or say or consent or even like a conversation about like this isn't what's working or this is what we like to see more of. Or it's literally like it almost made I could imagine it makes you feel disposable.
It does, absolutely. And that year was a huge reason why I will never, ever work with an MCN ever again. Multi-channel networks are great if you're just getting started and like you need that visibility maybe. And if they're a company that offers that visibility, then great. Revision 3 did that for the shows that I was on. Twit did that really well for me as a host. So in those ways, those experiences were pretty positive. But when it came down to it, they're in charge. They have full control over those shows that you're working on. And if they don't see the income that they want to see, if they don't see the views that they want to see or the growth, then they can fire you. They can cancel the show. They can bring in a new host, like whatever they want. If they don't like you as a person, they can replace you. And those were things that I had experienced. One, because, maybe they wanted a male co-host instead of a female. I had experiences where somebody just didn't like my perspectives or how transparent I am about my views online. So I've had a lot of those experiences where people tried to, I would say, silence me, but and I didn't really like that. Like I want to be my own personality, my own self online. So yeah, I'm never working with an MCN ever again.
That seems to be the sentiment. We had Roberto Blake on the podcast too, and he had a very aggressive anti-MSIN standpoint as well. This has been so insightful because you have such unique and amazing perspective. I'd love to dive into your different income streams. Again, we have our pie chart that we use to show all the different ways that you make money. And I love that you have quality amounts from different things. So one, of course, AdSense is 10%. Sponsorships makes up 35%. I'm curious, like what has been your most successful sponsorship, like as of recently?
Last year was, well, I should say 2023. It's not the end of the year yet at time of recording, was a wonderful year. It was the first year that I had signed on 2 different sponsors for the entire year.
Wow.
And that was, yeah, I know, it was huge. It was so exciting. I'm working with Yubico and Delete Me, which are both companies that I have been a customer of for years and years. So it was really easy for me to promote them because it's 2 companies that I truly appreciate and that I truly believe in. And it was something that I've told people about long before they were sponsoring my channel. But they do like 1 or 2 episodes per month with me. And it brings in that solid kind of like a base sponsor income that I trust is going to come in for the entirety of 2023 because of contracts, because of signed and legal contracts. So I know it's going to happen. And that was a really, really big moment. It was very exciting. And that was one of the coolest moments when I was able to go to my friends and be like, guess what? I got sponsorships all year.
That is amazing. And I find those relationships to be the best because that's how some of my relationships work as well. I find that smaller companies are looking for mighty relationships with really great creators that believe in their products. They always, I think, want to work with fans first. Because I know like you have like some big flashy ones, like you work with Google and like you break their phones or try to break their phones. You have the buds and the tablets and all the other things that they do. So if you're like, oh man, I wish I could work with Google. And you're like, nah, man, it's these small ones that we can do these long-term commitment with that can be a lot of impact and value that I think are so much better. What do you think is the secret to finding smaller companies that you can build long-term relationships with?
For me, it's my niche, like being able to find this very specific niche of security and privacy for consumers. That's something that I'm able to use my channel to really educate people on. And I've also been like tagging those companies for years, like on social media. And I've been chatting with them every single time I see their booth at a convention. I'll go over there and be like, hi, I'm Shannon. Can I get your card? And I'll stay in contact with them over email. And it was many, many years of building those relationships, but it's paid off because I'm able to work with them on a transactional monetary level now. And they love what I'm doing for them. And being able to provide that to them and know that it's exciting for me because it's something that I believe in, Like that's really special. Working with Google is awesome because Google's such a fun company to work with, and they
I can
always had
imagine.
something really interesting to do. I love their tech. I've been using their products since they had this line called the Nexus. Yeah, yay. I love it.
I'm team Android and Google, like
Yes, me
all the
too.
way.
So I love being able to work with them too, and it's always so exciting, but a lot of their promotions are one-off things, so they just come and go. And that's cool. Like I love being able to do those and I'm always like, "Yes, let's do it." Like I'm so excited to work with you. But I love being able to have those long-term relationships with the smaller companies because I feel like I'm a part of building something.
I feel like it's a difference between like I think that probably these bigger brands add a level of visibility and validation to a brand, but it's these smaller ones that support us that allow for us to have longevity in our spaces when it comes to like brands and financial situations and opportunities.
Part of it. So I love the smaller companies. They're so fun.
They're great. Especially when you get them early, right? All right.
Yeah.
So we have 10% of your income comes from affiliates. We have 25% that comes from membership. So this is your second highest revenue stream between
Yes.
between sponsorships and membership. That makes up 60% of your income, which I think is amazing that you have built such a strong and mighty community for so long that allows for you to have that significant income. And I'm so grateful to have gotten that like insight from you. We have 5% from merch, 5% from doing like spokesperson and UGC work. Who are some of the brands that you've gotten to do this for?
Oh gosh, all sorts. Let's see. Over the years, I've worked with Sony, I've worked with MediaTek, I've worked with Google, Alienware, like Dell, Lenovo. So I've done a lot of like sponsored UGC type content where,
Uh-huh.
you sell some kind of like NIL license, name, image, likeness license so that you're producing content for them.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing, and I kind of struggled with the percentages a bit there, was because some of my sponsors are now asking me to do spokesperson content. So that's going to be like an additional fee on top of what I already charge. But it is an opening where I will potentially be able to increase that amount and be able to kind of lower the sponsorship percentage by a little bit in terms of the pie chart total so that I have a little bit more diversification in terms of, adding a little bit more of that spokesperson stuff. So that's fun and that's cool. It's not necessarily my focus because I really want to focus on my own channel and growing that with my own content that I really want to do. But having something outside of that where you're producing content for another brand, like that's definitely a thing that I think a lot of YouTube content creators should consider and should offer as an item whenever they're selling some kind of media kit, some kind of rate.
Mark my words, like put this in the record books, write it on the calendar. I really believe that as we head to 2024, we're going to see a shift in content creation being more towards brand partnerships and creators making things for other companies. I think the business space is finally understanding that they need to create their own brand and their own content. And they're either going to be doing one of two things. They're going to be hiring in-house talent that can do it for them because we as creators, we know how to do this and we know the language, the lingo, we have the equipment oftentimes. And so we already come with this pre-existing skill set to do it for them. So they'd rather just pay for bypassing the experience of trying to figure out how to do it themselves and all that stuff. Or two, they're going to be working with creators in a very similar way where it's like, well, we want to contract work with you for your likeness, for your experience, whether it's like just your hands or the thing that you're doing. We already see this in the beauty and travel space. For sure, where they're creating things and products and stuff like that. I think we're going to see it across all areas of content creation and all niches as well. So I think that number has a real opportunity to increase. And I love your whole thing where it's like, oh, I mean, if you want this, I'm happy to do this because I love it. It's my skill, but it's going to cost you more because I can't use it for my brand. And if you want me to take away from my brand, it's going to cost you extra. And I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, it's very important because you can't, like, you have no control over that content too. Like once you give them that master file, they do whatever they want with it. Like they could cut it down and turn it into an ad on Facebook. Like you have no idea how they're going to cut it too. Given that you don't have that control over the production after you've created the content for them, you should charge more. Like, and that's just how it goes. You should charge more, not only because of that, but also because if they go to like a Hollywood production company, chances are they'd be charged a lot more than what you're going to be charging them for like a smaller business.
Yeah, you don't have the markups big companies have around stuff. Like Studio-based equipment.
Rent any equipment. I don't have to bring in a camera person. I do all my own camera work. I have an editor and I pay her.
Yeah,
So
me too.
that's definitely something I consider with my fees.
Yeah, well, and I know for me, like, I have a really big unfinished basement space, and over the holiday break, I'm creating recording bays in my basement space for different brands that I'm going to be doing partnership work with because I understand, again, I have a skill, I have an ability, I have the space, and I'm like, let me just dive into it. It's a really great, I think, unthought of financial opportunity for so many creators.
I also have an unfinished basement and I turned it into a studio. I finally finished it with a contractor and I take that, like the amount that I was charged to build this was like 40,000, and I take that into perspective too. Is like, how much did it cost to finish this entire basement? I had them build it so that I could consider, hey, maybe I should build this so that I have a space where I can create productions for other brands. So I have a space in here for that now. I also have a space where I can build more than one set, and I have a space where I can do builds off camera. So I was thinking about all these things ahead of time and like, how can I build my company so that this can be like a production company for more than just my channel in the future once I have the time to be able to do that.
It is so powerful. And I think something definitely for some people to consider. I watched the tour that Colin and Samir did for Marquez Brownlee, and I love that he had like a light box, essentially, like a really big light box, and then they had on the wall next to it was like every single color background that they could have ever imagined because they do those top-down shots of products and stuff, and like, well, we need every color. And it's like, so we have to account for every potential color that we would need to do for whatever it is that we're doing. And I was like, that's the kind of thinking you have to think through when you're talking about production in that kind of a way, for sure. Especially I think in the tech space obviously is really high. Like, you can't just make a mediocre quality tech video. They have to be really high quality. But I love this idea of, well, I have the equipment, I have the skill I'm doing for myself. Let me add this. Let me consider what else I can do with it as a way to maximize the profitability of the things that you have bought. So now you have your last one on here, which is syndication, licenses, and royalties is 10%. What is it that you license and do royalties with?
That's mainly just the licensing of like my name, image, and likeness. So I kind of merged those two items together because I wasn't sure where to place it. But yeah, that's when I'm selling those images and likeness so that people can use them for like paid usage for in marketing and things like that. So I never do in perpetuity, which is very important for a content creator, because if something like I do cybersecurity, security and privacy. So if a company got hacked in the future, I don't want to be a part of that brand's likeness. So I always have a cutoff date that they have to adhere by on my contracts whenever they want to use my image and likeness. And I think that's so important, even if you're outside of like the cybersecurity space, having some kind of cutoff so that you're not stuck with just this one frame of topic if you ever decide to go outside of that, explore different brands, for example.
How do you track that? Like, how do you make sure that brands aren't still doing that?
Honestly, like my viewers kind of track it.
Okay.
Like anytime I do some kind of image and likeness thing and they use it for paid media, like I'll see it because they'll tag me. Oftentimes the company will tag me. If they don't tag me, my viewers will, it happens all the time where a viewer will screenshot an ad and be like, I thought I heard your voice. And then I looked at my screen and I saw you on Facebook and I'm like, oh, that's so funny. Like, that's really cool. So a lot of times it's just like, it's, I'm not really tracking it on the back end, but I know which ones I've offered this to. And if a viewer tells me that they're still using it, I can contact them and be like, hey, that's not under contract. You have to take that down.
Or pay
you can pay. You can refresh that content. Like, that contract is fine, but my rate's gone up. So
yeah, especially because you're using it. So I feel like there has to be like a fee in place. Like, if you do you have like a line in your contract? If you do use it after a contract date, this is the fee for it.
No, I don't. But I do reach out to sponsors whenever contracts are ending and tell them like, hey, I have some openings for deliverables. I also have openings for NIL licensing, and I'm not with any competing brands. Would you be interested in refreshing this contract?
Wow. Like, this is like another layer like of the money cake that I think so many creators never thought of. I haven't even ever thought of this, and I feel like I have a pretty strong understanding of money making as a YouTuber. Like, I know, like I've been in like for example, I've done Justin's Brand Wizard course where he talks about sponsorships. He talks a ton about contracts and licensing fees and not having the cutoff dates, not doing things in perpetuity. Like, don't let brands own your stuff, like all that kind of stuff. But the idea of offering renewal fees as a way to get like that extra residual income off of stuff you've already done, like, mwah, chef kiss. Like that is some gangster level money making right there.
It's kind of something I learned from working with multi-channel networks. So it wasn't all bad working with MCNs. Yeah, I educated myself. I took notes.
I can imagine you learned a lot from those MCN things. Like, one of the things I never touched because of all the warnings is I came into the creator space in 2017. I was radaring it 2016, but we were having a life change. So 2017 was when I dove into it. There were so many things out there that are like, don't do it. Don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, all of the things. And I wonder, like, I feel like this is someone I need to find to be on this podcast, like someone from MCNs. It's like, okay, why did y'all do this? And what is the state of this now? Because I feel like it's a fair conversation to have. And like, what does it look like? And how are they combating like that super negative imaging?
I could even tell you from my perspective, like we joined the MCN because we wanted that visual appeal. Like, we wanted them to be able to promote us because Revision 3 was a big name back in the day. Like, that was one of the biggest MCNs. So we joined them, and we went to a party in New York so that we could get face to face with one of the CEOs. We were like, we want to be on this MCN. We made ourselves known, and it worked. And we signed a contract, but I don't remember what the percentage was that they were taking because I was just hosting. I wasn't doing a lot of the contract signing at the time, but I was a part of the conversation. And having that visibility for our channel really helped us grow. And having them sell ads against our channel let us know what we're worth at the time, like in the eyes of sponsors and in the eyes of that MCN. So from that information, we were able to gain a lot of perspective about how we are seen from an external space. Like, how much should we be charging if we were not with an MCN? Like, could we charge just as much or a little bit less and be able to bring in more because we're getting 100% of that as opposed to a smaller percentage? So we were able to learn, oh my gosh, it was great. Like, I want to do it now because I'm able to make more than what an MCN would offer, and I don't need that visual. I don't need their advertisement for my channel. Like, I don't need them to go out and market my channel for me. I can do that myself now. But back in the day, that was big for us. And YouTube was a lot smaller space too.
All right. Final question. What is your next money move?
Ooh, I love that. Well, it is the end of the year, so I'm going to be signing contracts for next year. I think my next big money move is going to be focusing back on those memberships again. That's been a big thing, and I would like to introduce some kind of merch, like physical merch. Nothing that I have to laboriously pack myself, but something that I can get, what is it called, drop shipped. I have experience with my previous shows doing shipping from a warehouse, so I understand how to do all that stuff myself, but I also understand drop shipping pretty well because of that. So I would like to create something that is my own, like my own branding, that people just know when they look at the colors and they look at the font and the space and see like, oh, that's Morse code. That's that YouTube channel I like. Like, that's cool. So like if a couple of fans see each other, like, I don't know, at a McDonald's or something and see each other's hoodies, they can be like, oh, I love that channel. That's so cool. You're a fan too. Like, I want that to happen.
Or like people ask questions like, oh, where'd you get that? And you get to tell them. They're like, oh, that's so dope.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. All right, Shannon.
So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for diving into your financial journey. It's so fascinating. It's so much history in this space that we've gotten to learn from. And I'm just so grateful for that. So thank you so much. Until next time. Bye, guys.
The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by GigaStar, a parent company of GigaStar Market, an SEC-registered funding portal, and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Music provided by APM Music, unrivaled music to bring your stories to life. Neither GigaStar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.